Hey, good morning, friends. Today, my friends, is Tuesday, December the 16th, 2025, and the time now is 7:53 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk about Benin, and I want to talk specifically about the coup in Benin, which happened recently. And I'm talking about the failed coup in Benin, which happened over 1 week ago. Now, friends, it is very interesting, and as I've said many times, Africa is ripe for a revolution. And this revolution, I believe, could spread or will spread throughout the continent. However, friends, how this revolution spread and the consequence of the spread of this revolution is yet to be seen or to unfold. But I do believe that Africa is ripe for a revolution, and this revolution will happen in various ways. The people of Africa are disgruntled, they are tired. Africans, we are disgruntled and we are tired. Whether we are talking about Africans at home in Africa, on the continent, or Africans like myself around the world, African expat in various countries or various places around the world, we are tired. Many of us are stranded in other people's country in which we've been for years or decades, and we want to go back to our home. Many of us Africans, we are tired of the fact that we see African resources, raw materials, leaving Africa for other people's benefit, while we ourselves, us ourselves, and our people continue to suffer. And in this case, friends, we continue to see lack of development in Africa, and so on and so on and so on. Now, friends, just about a week ago, we saw a failed coup happen in Benin. By now, there is no news, and it is no news that there had been a recently failed coup in Benin. And as of now, friends, it is also certain, and it has been confirmed that immediately as the coup was happening, the coup was also being foiled. And it is said that Nigeria did flew some bombers, basically plane, fighter jets in Benin. Nigeria flew over Benin and in collaboration with France. So basically, France had been giving Nigeria intelligent information, and Nigeria carried out the attack over Benin. So, friends, it is interesting that countries such as Nigeria, which is the giant of Africa, continue to fight other African countries, continue to fight their brothers and sisters in order to give white people, white men and white men countries, the opportunity, the upper hand to step on Africa, to basically assign or continue to assign African the inferior status in the world, to prevent growth and changes on the African continent and the moving forward in a progressive, successful manner of the African people. Now, it is interesting that Nigeria, immediately as we were seeing a coup in Benin, Nigeria was immediately attacking. Nigeria went on the counter-offensive to prevent the coup from happening. Now, we have to be honest. Nigeria is on the east side, is the eastern neighbor of Benin. Benin and Nigeria, these are the same people to a greater or lesser extent. The same tribe, the same ethnicity, the same custom. They are basically the same people. However, we should also say that because Benin is west of Nigeria or Nigeria is east of Benin, what happens in Benin, being that both countries have border, there could be a greater implication in what happened in Nigeria. So perhaps This could be the reason why Nigeria's Bola Tinubu ordered Nigerian military and ECOWAS to go into Benin. Perhaps it is not only because the French wanted it to happen, but because Nigeria also saw its security risk. The Nigerian government also saw the possibility that if a coup happened successfully in Benin, right across the border from Nigeria, that it could have a very serious consequences for Nigeria in the near or far future. But what is interesting is that many of us Africans and others around the world are scratching our heads. And also, we are expressing doubt and sarcasm and other interesting thoughts about the fact that Nigeria was able to send its military and ECOWAS into Benin to prevent a coup, to stop a coup, while at the same time, Nigeria is having difficulty fighting Boko Haram terrorists in Nigeria, on Nigerian soil. So this is an interesting occurrence. You are able to go fight other people in their country, prevent chaos in other countries, while there has been chaos continuously in your own country, which you've been very much abysmal in terms of your activity, in terms of your action targeting such chaos in your country. However, should this prolong, the fact that Nigeria is sending ECOWAS and Nigerian troops into Benin, let's say something very massive happened within Nigeria. Nigeria, I believe, could be forced to recall its troops and ECOWAS troops in Benin back into Nigeria. So it is very interesting. And now you have Trump, who had been threatening to attack Nigeria, quote unquote, to save Christians. Let's assume that Trump carry out such an attack, which many are saying that Trump is not going to do. He was just basically making threat as a means to get whatever concession from Nigeria that he wants. Let's assume, however, Trump ordered American troops to attack Nigeria, which in this case, Nigeria will be stretched because Nigeria has troops in Benin and ECOWAS troops in Benin. And now the United States is attacking Nigeria or terrorist groups into Nigeria. This, I believe, can be very serious in terms of the danger or the consequences for Nigeria. Even right now, as we speak, let's say Boko Haram decided to carry out another mass-scale attack in Nigeria. What then will the Nigerian government tell the Nigerian people and the rest of the world? You do have your men in Benin to prevent chaos in other people's country. Meanwhile, you cannot prevent chaos in your own country. But it is very interesting. I think Africans need to take note and Africans need to begin to organize themselves, not just among themselves, however, but organize with the African diaspora. And I'm talking in this case with the African diaspora, in that the Africans born on the continent who are expats around the world and the descendants of Africans who had been taken out of the continent or from the continent illegally against their will and enslaved. And we are talking about the American blacks, okay, African Americans. We are talking about Africans in Haiti, in Brazil, Colombia, the Caribbean, or throughout the rest of the Western Hemisphere. We are talking about Africans in the Eastern Hemisphere, Africans in the Arabian Peninsula, Africans in Asia, and so on. Africans, we need to begin to collaborate and cooperate, form a new wave of solidarity among our people on the continent and also throughout the diaspora as a means to fight white supremacy and the current stage and rage of white supremacy. And we are seeing right now collaboration and cooperation within whiteness, and I'm talking about the far right, the most radical element of white superiority, okay? Superiority is emerging once again. Or perhaps we can say it never went away. It was just laying dormant, sleeping. Now, in terms of the situation in Africa, it continues. We saw, as I've said earlier, a failed coup in Benin, which as of now, there is no news. It is of no news, no new news that Nigeria, led by France, basically foiled the coup in Benin. But again, the question is, so Nigeria, why is it that you are able and you quickly act to prevent coup in Benin? Meanwhile, you're incapable in protecting your own people or in targeting, addressing the situation in Nigeria. And I'm talking specifically about the terrorist group Boko Haram and so on and so on and so on. Throughout Africa, we've seen several coups. We saw a coup in Madagascar. We saw a coup in Guinea-Bissau. We are seeing lots of things happen in France. We are going to see coup and instability or unrest in other African countries. Gabon, possibly Liberia, Ivory Coast once again, Senegal, Ethiopia, Kenya, and so on and so on and so on. The people of Africa are tired. We are tired of going nowhere, of not progressing, because we do have idiots who run the continent who are doing nothing to protect, support, and defend the people. Now, in terms of the coup in Benin, recently I made a video about the fact that the president of Benin and or the Benin parliament did pass a law basically extending the presidential term, the term limit, and also the year, the amount of time, okay, for each term that a president can be in power. Looking at that, okay, perhaps we can say that was one of the reasons for this recent coup attempt in Benin. We have African leaders in government making ridiculous decree, passing ridiculous laws to basically protect themselves, which in this case will enable many of the disgruntled citizens and soldiers, army personnel, to want to act basically to prevent these guys, these elite leaders, from having their ways in Africa. The people are tired. Now, it is very interesting following the coup in Benin, the failed coup attempt in Benin. One official in Benin made a statement that the coup attempt was an attack on democracy, which is nonsense. You extending your presidential term, you being in power for a long time, you doing whatever you can to enrich France, the United States, and the West, strengthening Western alliance and Western power over Africa. It's anti-democratic. Soldiers getting angry, people getting angry and trying to take you out as a government, as a leader, is not more or less of an attack on democracy as your activity as the leaders, the president, and the government of the various African countries. Therefore, friends, such statement is nothing but hypocrisy. But in terms of the situation in Benin, I don't think it's the end. I think it is going to happen because the people are tired. And those soldiers who fail in terms of the coup because of the activity of Nigeria and France, I do believe they are going to come back. And I do believe they do have friends who are now angry at Nigeria and at France, and possibly are more angry at the Benin government. However, friends, my fear now is what is happening in Benin in Africa. I hope Nigeria doesn't feel any intense, serious consequences. As much as Nigeria, like any African country or country around the world, does have its own issue. In Nigeria, yes, there are corruptions as much as there are corruption throughout Africa and around the world. In the United States, in Europe, in the UK, all over the world, there are corruption. As much as Nigeria has its own issue, Nigeria is the giant of Africa in terms of population, in terms of culture, in terms of economics. We as Africans cannot afford to see a dismantled, destabilized Nigeria. Therefore, what we need to do is, as much as Nigeria has its problem, many of us Africans are angry at some of the activities or actions of the Nigerian government. As much as we are angry, our policy should be how do we keep Nigeria intact, stable, and not being dismantled, because that is vital to African security. However, in terms of the situation in Benin, I think there are more to come, and it is not over yet. Now, friends, if you're watching my video for the first time, or if you're new to this channel, The Echoing Voice, I want you to know that every international institution, every significant, prominent international institution, such as the African Union, the European Union, ASEAN, NATO, CARICOM, and so on, does have at least one playlist on this channel. However, every country has at least two playlists on this channel. One is named the country's name and the other domestic the country's name. And this is how it works. The country's name playlist will feature videos, talks, programs, or ideas that focus specifically on the country's position in its region and around the world, the country's geopolitical interaction and position with other countries and institutions in its region, on its continent, and around the world. And in this case, we are talking about Benin and the coup, the failed coup in Benin. Therefore, the Benin playlist will feature videos, talks, programs, or ideas about 1. Nigeria's interaction or activities into Benin to prevent the coup in Benin, and also France's interaction with Nigeria to prevent the coup in Benin as a means of French maintaining its power over Benin and in Africa, and also Benin's interaction and activities with institutions in West Africa, Africa, and around the world. However, for the domestic countries playlist, it features videos, talks, programs, or ideas that focus specifically on the country's situation, the domestic situation in the country, in terms of education, infrastructure, youth and sport, employment, unemployment, food security, education, and so on and so on and so on. Therefore, the domestic Benin playlist will feature videos, talks, programs, or ideas about the situation in Benin. Now, friends, please tell me what you think, and I really want to know what you think. However, friends, I am going to end here. I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, my friends, but most especially and most importantly, or most important, friends, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace, my friends. Peace.